Wednesday night schedule, so we try to keep things in an orderly manner, orderly fashion. I'd like to thank this week's sponsors. Thank you very much. In the order they came in, Yehuda and Aviva ben Chorin, in memory of Aviva's mother, Sarina bat Rachel, whose yahrzeit is this week on the 4th of Tammuz. So may her neshama have an aliyah, and may the Torah study we learn in her merit raise her soul even higher in the merit of the Zera Shimshon. Amen. Thank you. Next is Joel Goldman, in honor of his children, Charlotte, and her Hebrew name is Shoshana Leah, as well as Madeline, her Hebrew name is Miriam Giza. May they be blessed, happy, healthy, successful, Bezrat Hashem with the new school year. Them and all of our children should have a great, great school year, hopefully in a safe, in-person environment. Amen. Ron, I see you laughing over there. You're like, this is definitely not happening. You're like my wife. My wife says also there's no school next year, but hopefully, please God, there will be. You're on mute. This is the best part, Ron. You can't even talk back. Okay. Last but not least, Mayor and Stephanie Friedman, in memory of Stephanie's dear high school friend, Mirel Weinberger. Her Hebrew name was Mirel Dvorah bat Rachel, who was a dedicated and devoted wife and mother to her family and community, and especially if someone was in need of food or needed a ride to the hospital for treatment, Mirel would be always the first to drop everything and attend those in need. So may her neshama have an aliyah. All of her great kindness serve as a elevation to her soul, and the learning of the Torah study and the Zera Shimshon should be in her great merit. Amen. That's for tonight's sponsors. Now we're going to start with tonight's class. So tonight is one of the very, very special, well, this week is one of the very, very special Torah portions, speaking about a dispute. Now, I know whenever you're reading a book or you're watching a movie, the times of the dispute is when everyone wakes up and they're like, okay, what's going to happen next? And the truth is between last week's Torah portion and the spies, and this week's Torah portion with Korach, and soon we're going to have Balak and Bilam, we are short of no interesting and exciting episodes. This week, we're going to speak about Korach and who Korach was, what was his issue, who was his issue with, and we're going to see that this man was a troubled man. Besides for him being a troubled man, he was a wise man. He was a very wealthy man. He was a prominent man. But he had his issues, like us all, but his issues, unfortunately, led him to his grand defeat. So Korach's main issue, his underlying issue was he had a personal issue with his cousin Moses. He knew, though, he was a smart dude, right? He knew that he couldn't just go outright against Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe was too beloved by the people. He was too strong, too popular, too famous. I mean, let's just remind ourselves. He was sent by God. He told them the secret name, the special name that God told him to say. They all knew it was him. Did the 10 plagues, splitting of the sea, war of Amalek, 10 commandments. It's going on and on and on and on and on. So with the forgiveness for the golden calf, there's been so many good things for Moshe, even though the Jewish people just still were focusing on a lot of negativity. There was still a lot going for Moses, to the point where Korach was too smart to say, I can't go after him straight. So how did he allow himself to create this rebellion against his cousin Moses? What is it that he exactly did? So I want to give two different interpretations. This is before the Zera Shimshon. The two different interpretations on what it was that Korach was leeching onto, hanging onto to start this rebellion, right? Like a rebellion, like the politics that's been going on over the past couple of weeks. There's always something that happens, and then when that thing happens, people are able to manipulate it and take it out of whack. Okay, and I'm not going to say anything specific, but we all know exactly what I'm talking about. The police, the whole thing, right? So listen to these two different interpretations of what it was that Korach was riding off of in order to cause this grand explosion. The Ibn Ezra tells us, one of our great medieval scholars, great Torah commentary, he tells us that the rebellion happened exactly after the inauguration of the tabernacle. At that point, when the priesthood was given to Aaron and his descendants, Korach felt that he was passed over. He felt, I am a Bechor, I'm a firstborn. And as a firstborn, the rights of the service in the tabernacle and eventually in the temple belong to us, every single firstborn in every single family. We all deserve that right. So he felt like he was passed over, and this is how he caused this whole rebellion. What he did was he got another 250 Bechors, 250 firstborns, and he joined them on. Hey, all of you should be the ones doing the service, not Moses' older brother. There's nepotism going on over here. And that's how he was riling them up. So where does Datan, Aviram, and On, and we're going to speak more about them in a moment, but where do these three characters come in? They weren't firstborns. What was it that they were bothered about? Well, they were from the tribe of Reuben. The tribe of Reuben, who is the Bechor, the eldest of all of Jacob's sons, they were supposed to be in one time frame the Kohanim, the priests. But then it was taken away, and then it was given to Joseph. And then after that, it was given to all the firstborns of every single family. So this group of 254 gentlemen, that is Korach, Datan, Aviram, and On, and the other 250 people, they all felt slighted that their right to the service in the tabernacle and in the temple was taken away from them. From that, they created this whole rebellion against Moses. That's the Ibn Ezra's opinion. The Nachmanides, the Ramban, has a different understanding of what was bothering Korach, or what he was so worked up about. You see, according to the Ibn Ezra, the order of our Torah is not in order, right? The order of this took really a long time ago, according to Korach. Okay, but in our Torah right now, we've just finished the spies, and then we're moving on with the story of Balak and Bilam. So the Ramban, the Nachmanides, says it happened right after the decree that the Jewish people were going to be in the desert, and they're not going to enter the land of Israel. See, after that horrible day on the Tisha B'Av, on the 9th of Av, when the Jewish people cried in vain, it was decreed that anyone over 20 years old would not enter the land of Israel. They rather would perish in the desert. The Jewish people were devastated. The whole point of why they came out of Egypt was to enter the land of Israel. So the Jews were on a low, explains Nachmanides. When they were on that low is exactly when Korach took the opportunity and said, now's the time for rebellion. So what was he bothered about? He was bothered by the fact that his younger cousin, I'm going to share with you a diagram in a moment to exactly show you how and who. His younger cousin, Eltsafan, his name was the one who was nominated as the head of the tribe of Kehat, the head of the family of Kehat. So what does that mean? Take a look at your screens, and I'm going to share with you. I have it in Hebrew, and then I'll do it in English. Jacob has 12 children, okay? Levi, his third son. Here it is. Jacob has 12 sons. Third son is Levi. Very good. Levi has 3 sons, Gershon, Kehat, and Merari. We see that? Now the second son, Kehat, has 4 sons. Amram, famous name, right? Give me a thumbs up, everybody. Famous name. Yitzhar, Chevron, and Uziel. Little less famous names. But now we get to some famous names. We have the son of Amram is Aaron and Moshe. Yitzhar's son was Korach. Oh, now we know who we're talking about. They were first cousins. Their grandfather was Kehat. And the last of the brothers, Uziel, has a son named Eltsafan. So Moses is nominated by God as the prophet, the leader, the king. His brother Aaron is Kohen Gadol, the high priest. Korach says, who's the next male in line? It is him. And he passes over and doesn't only go over to the children of Hebron, but he goes over to the children of the youngest of the uncles, and Eltzaphan was nominated as the grand leader of the tribe or the family of Kehat. In English, just for anyone who prefers it in English, you have Jacob, Levi, Kehat. Kehat has 4 children. Aaron and Moses are from the eldest, Amram. Korach is from the second eldest, and Eltzaphan, who was nominated as the Nasi, as the prince of this family, was from the youngest. And this was Korach's issue. His issue was twofold, explains the Ramban. Number 1, he wasn't given the priesthood. Number 2, he wasn't given the position of the leader of their family. And that's something that bothered him tremendously. Now, after saying that, I want to share with you what Rashi tells us. So the first verse in this week's Torah portion is as follows. Vaikach Korach ben Yitzhar ben Kehat ben Levi. So Korach took, we'll speak about that in a moment. He was the son of Yitzhar, who was the son of Kehat, who was the son of Levi. We just saw that, right? Korach ben Yitzhar ben Kehat ben Levi. Okay? Who else was part of his rebellion? Datan, Aviram, the children of Eliav, which was from the tribe of Reuven, and On ben Pelet. So we've got these 4 gentlemen. They came and they picked a fight with Moses, and they were starting a rebellion. Rashi tells us something fascinating. He says, you know what it was they came up with? They didn't come up and say, Moses, you're committing nepotism. You're giving out all the nominations to the people you like best, to your brother, to your youngest baby cousin that you maybe can control, but you're skipping over me. That's not what Korach said at first. You know what he said? He says, Korach, you see this over here? Does everyone see it in the camera? This is a tzitzit, right? He says, this tzitzit that you're telling us to do is supposed to, now I'm not going to get into it now why I don't have a blue one nowadays, but there's only supposed to be 1 blue string in the tzitzis, okay? 1 techelet fringe part of this whole garment. He says, what if the whole garment was blue? Maybe it would make sense that there wouldn't need to be any strings on the corners at all. Furthermore, that was his first thing. He says, Moses, you have been mistaken. Because he came to Moses and says, what if? And Moses says, no, you still need it on the corners. He says, no, that's wrong. Second, he says, what if I have a house with a Torah in it? Or even many books in it? Do I need to have a mezuzah on the doorpost? And Moses says, yes, based on what I learned from God. Korach says, that makes no sense. The post has only 2 paragraphs from the Torah, and the entire Torah will be in that house. You've been mistaken again. Everyone, you see? Moses is lying. Moses is inventing the Torah. Those are the 2 mitzvot, commandments, that Korach is attacking Moses with. This is what Rashi tells us. The Zera Shimshon asks a fundamental question. He says, Korach's issue wasn't with the mezuzah, and it wasn't with the Torah. It was with Moses, and specifically his nominations of his younger cousin, of his brother, and skipping over him. The Zera Shimshon wants to know, what do these 2 mitzvot, the mitzvah of tzitzit and the mitzvah of mezuzah, have to do with Korach's claim, have to do with Korach's rebellion against Moses? It's a good question, right? Why tzitzis and why mezuzah? Listen to what the Zera Shimshon says. The Zera Shimshon says Korach came and he claimed that he was wiser and older than his younger cousin Eltzaphan. And for that reason, he felt like he should have been the leader of this tribe. The Zera Shimshon says, you know what Korach reasoned? He said, what's the purpose of tzitzit? The Torah tells us the purpose. There aren't too many obligations, too many mitzvot in our Torah that it says the reason why. But when there is a reason given for that mitzvah, it's very interesting. We have to take it even stronger. So the Torah tells us the reason why we are to wear tzitzit. Take a look at your screen. This is at the end of last week's Torah portion. Ve'aya lachem letzitzit, and you shall have the fringes on your garment. Or item oto, and you will see them. Uzchartem et kol mitzvot Adonai. When you see them, you shall remember all of God's commandments, vasitem otam, in order that you can perform them. We're going to stop here. We're not going to do the whole verse. Explains the Zera Shimshon, the purpose of tzitzit. The reason why we wear tzitzit is to see them and to remember all of God's commandments. Now you may ask, well, how am I going to remember God's commandments by seeing some strings on the corner of my garment? And to that, the Talmud in Masechet Menachot tells us that when we look at the tzitzit, and specifically the blue fringe in the tzitzit, we are to remind ourselves of the ocean. And the ocean is only blue, by the way, because of its reflection of the sky. Once you're already thinking about the sky, explains the Talmud, you're going to think of God's throne, which is in the sky and the same color as the sky. It's that same beautiful blue. And that is supposed to bring you towards the fear of God and inspire you to fulfill God's will, to fulfill the mitzvot, to fulfill the commandments. So comes Korach and says, if the whole point is to remember God, the whole point of tzitzit is to remember God, to do his mitzvot, so if one string can bring me that remembrance, that signal, all the more so could an entire garment serve as that purpose. He says, Moses, you have been mistaken in your learning from God. You're inventing. You've made a mistake here. That's number one. Now the Zera Shimshon says, what did Korach claim about a mezuzah? Korach came and reasoned that a mezuzah is put up on the door for protection. That's why we put a mezuzah. If you look at a mezuzah, on the outside of the parchment, rolled up, we see it even when it's rolled, there's 3 letters. Those 3 letters also signify God's name, one of God's names, Shin, Dalid, and Yud. But it also signifies an acronym for Shomer Daltot Israel, that God is guarding the doors of Israel. So Korach is saying the whole point of the mezuzah is for protection. That's the reason. He says that this is hinted from the very word. Take a look at your screen. You see how the Torah refers to mezuzah, not a mezuzah, in plural, rather, as mezuzot. Mem zayin vav taf. If you take these letters and you split it up, the Zohar tells us, it says zaz mavet, that whenever a mezuzah is put up on a door, it shoos away death and calamity. So Korach is looking at this mitzvah and he's saying, aha, the whole reason why we put a mezuzah is for protection. So if I have an entire Torah that has not only those 2 paragraphs that it has in the mezuzah, and it has way, way more, shouldn't that serve as a protection for the house? An even greater protection. The Zera Shimshon says that Korach even thought of another proof. Take a look at your screen. We're in Deuteronomy, chapter 11, verses 20 and 21. When the Torah tells us, Uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha visharecha, and you shall inscribe them, the mezuzahs, upon the doorposts of your house and upon your gates. What's the reason? Look at the following verse. Leman yirbu yemechem bimei benechem al adama. In order that your days will be increased, and the days of your children. Again, showing us that the purpose for mezuzah is to guarantee life, is to provide protection. Based on this, Korach says, aha, Moses, you made a mistake again. He claimed Moses misunderstood these 2 mitzvot. And if he was able to misunderstand these two mitzvot, he could also misunderstand God's request for nominating the Kohen Gadol as well as the leader for the tribe. And that's what Korach said. The Zera Shimshon makes it so clear because remember, Korach was a tzaddik. He was righteous. He was wise. We mentioned he was wealthy. He was powerful. He was liked by everybody. He had a strong emunah. The Zera Shimshon says his faith was so strong he never came out and disputed anything that was written in the Torah or anything against God. He was a strong believer. He just had an issue with Moses. And he said, Moses, the Torah's flawless. You're flawed. You made a mistake. You misunderstood what God's directive was. Proof is, you messed up on tzitzit and mezuzah. And the Zera Shimshon says, Korach specifically chose these two mitzvot because these two mitzvot are mitzvot that seem to be fulfilled for another purpose. We put on tzitzit in order to remind us to do all other mitzvot. We put up a mezuzah not only for the sake of putting it up, but because it provides protection and longevity. Korach said, you made a mistake with understanding those. You probably made a mistake with who to nominate as the leader of our family, and it should have been me and not our baby cousin El Tzafan. So the lesson from this is the first part of the Zera Shimshon. It's very, very powerful. I hope you guys held along with this because it was fascinating. These two mitzvot specifically. Now, the lesson I wanted to share with this is that although one's logic may align with Torah, because that's what Korach was doing, he wasn't going against Torah. His proofs were in the Torah. He was going against Moses. But a person must realize, even though that their logic may be in line with Torah, they may be completely off target. They may be completely wrong. They may have to understand that they're going to have to defer to someone wiser. In this case, it was Moses. Who had a connection with God like Moses? Absolutely nobody ever had and ever will. Yet Korach said, now my cousin, he's playing, he's messing with us. And for that reason, he was punished tremendously, which we will speak about in just a moment. So let's move on to the next. This leads me to the next part of the Zera Shimshon. And there was a back and forth. It escalated from tzitzit and mezuzah to nominating our baby cousin, to nominating your brother. And now who do you think you are, Moses? That's how it escalated. So at the final confrontation, we see that somebody is missing. Again, let me show you on your screen. The Torah portion starts off that it was Korach, number 1, Datan, number 2, Aviram, number 3, and this person, On. I want to put this in bold. Okay? On is no longer there by the final confrontation. He just completely vanishes. And normally when that happens, we ask, where did he go? And it's not our question. It's not even the Zera Shimshon's question. It's the Talmud's question. The Talmud wants to know, where did this fellow go? And it's a famous story of On's wife. On's wife was a very, very wise woman, a very bright woman, a believer. Again, all 254 of these rebellious individuals were great believers. But she was smarter. You know what she said? She said, hey, On, my husband, where are you going? Oh, we're preparing for tomorrow. It's the grand showdown. We're taking up Moses on his claims. We're going to see who it really is going to be the new leader. It may be the incumbent. It may be the incoming. So On looks at her husband and says, hey, 1 second. Let me just get this straight over here. Either way, it's either going to be Moses or Korach as the leader of our nation. And you're still going to be second, third, fourth rank. You're not going to be up there either way. So what's the point of involving yourself in this? You have nothing to gain, yet all to lose. Your rationale, your logic make absolutely no sense. So I guess for the first time in On's life, he looks at his wife, he says, geez, you're right. Doesn't happen too often, right? Wow, you're really right, my wife. But I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. We all took an oath that we're not going to back out of this showdown tomorrow. What am I supposed to do? She said, don't worry, no problem. I got you covered, my husband. I know that, and I'm using these words specifically, you're going to see why. Kulam Kedoshim. I know that the entire group of you 254 are holy people. You're a holy congregation. But stay put, I'll take care of you. She fed him. She gave him to drink. He passed out, fell asleep. Okay? They were supposed to meet for the showdown at the break of dawn. He was long sleeping. She went outside their tent, and she took off her head covering and sat outside. And each person that came to get On, because he was one of the ringleaders, right? He was one of the top four. It was Korach, Datan, Aviram, and On. On was man number 4 out of 254. When they came to fetch him, they all came, they saw her, and they quickly ran away. Oh, she's not sanua, she's not modest, she's not dressed properly. Next person came, oh, they ran away. And she shooed them away to the point where On woke up after the whole showdown took place and after all of that rebellion was put to death by God. To which the Talmud tells us that there's a special verse that King Solomon had in mind when he wrote in Mishle. Listen to this verse. This verse is amazing, okay? I think all women should have this verse maybe as like a backsplash, a backdrop, your background on your computer, on your phone, on your wall. This got to be everywhere. Look at this. Chachmot Nashim Banta Beita. That it's the wisest of women. Each one built her house. Vivelet beadea terasna. But a foolish one tears it down with her hands. The first part explains the Talmud was what King Solomon was referring to as On's wife. On's wife was the wisest of women. She built her house. She saved her husband's life because of how she spoke to her husband and how she took care of the issue her husband had. Explains the Zera Shimshon. 2 questions. Why did she have to say that she knows that entire group is holy? What does that have to do with anything? And number 2, the title of Chokhmah, or Chachama, as she is referred to, this woman, is normally reserved for a term that's someone who understands Torah. Why was this specific term given to the wife of On? These are Zera Shimshon's 2 questions. I'm going to give you one answer that he gives. It's a nice answer. I'm going to give it to you short because the main answer I wanted to focus on is the second one. The first answer he gives, the Zera Shimshon, is that Korach and his entourage, they were coming and they were suspecting, they were claiming, falsely, obviously, that Moses is suspected for immorality. And therefore, Moses actually takes his tent and separates himself from everybody to just squash that ridiculous rumor. But what the Zera Shimshon says is that this group themselves, because they were claiming something about Moses, they were very diligent themselves in it. They claimed that Moses had committed immorality, so they themselves had to make sure they were squeaky clean that they weren't. And therefore, when they came to see On to fetch him and they saw his wife's hair uncovered, she knew they would quickly run away because they were super diligent in all aspects of morality, because they were claiming Moshe was immoral. And that's how she knew, that's how smart she was, and that's how she knew that she would shoo them away and save her husband. And that is how come it says, that's how come she said they are holy. And the lesson, very quick lesson on this, is that a person has to be very careful when they're blaming someone else, when they're claiming something about someone else. Something positive we learn in this week's Torah portion from this horrible group of rebellious individuals is that they still kept to this rule. They were claiming something against Moses, falsely, wrong, but they were very squeaky clean themselves on that, right? Someone can't come and say, oh, you're a thief, or you're a cheater, or you speak Lashon Hara, and you do this, A, B, and C, and they themselves are doing it. It's hypocritical. So the lesson of being a hypocrite and how that's completely unacceptable, just doesn't work, we can learn from from this week's Torah portion. But that's not the main answer I wanted to share with you from the Zera Shimshon. That's just a nice one. I want to show you a nicer one, or another one. Let's put it as another one. The Zera Shimshon gives an answer, and he says, Korach confronts Moshe Rabbeinu. And Moshe answers. Take a look at your screen for Moshe's answer. Moshe says, Vayomer Moshe el Korach. Moses speaks to Korach, and he says, Shim'una b'nei Levi. Please listen, sons of Levi. 1 second. That is the most absurd verse I've ever seen. Moses speaks to Korach, and then he says, listen here, children of Levi. It should say, and Moses spoke to Korach, saying, and Moses spoke to Korach, Korach, you listen up. Why does he say, please listen, sons of Levi? It's like you're talking to somebody, and then all of a sudden you change and you're speaking to someone else. Makes absolutely no sense. So, to answer that, the Zera Shimshon tells us a midrash. The midrash says that Moshe was speaking to Korach, but he was addressing all of the Levites. You know why he was addressing all of the Levites? Because the Yalkut Reuveni says that Moses was told by God that this group will die. If Moses was told this group would die, why did he come and give them another chance to reconsider? It seems like Moses is being deceitful. So Korach's fate was decided that he would perish. But the rest of them had a chance to do teshuvah till the last moment. With this, the Zera Shimshon says, On's wife, you know what she tried to do? She tried to convince her husband On that he can still do teshuvah, even though he took an oath, even though he stood there at the front lines of this riot, of this parade, of this rebellion. Nevertheless, he can still repent. And she proved it. You know how she proved it? She proved it from the way Moses addressed Korach. Because he came to speak to Korach and he said, listen up, children of Levi. Why did he change it? Because Korach had no chance. It was only the other children of Levi that had a chance, not Korach himself. But still, she said, you do have a chance. Aha, this is what makes her wise. Wise to the term that's given to someone who understands Torah. Because she was very diligent in listening and understanding and drawing a correct conclusion from Moses' words. The Zera Shimshon says Moses' words are like Torah. And therefore, since Moses he spoke to Korach, and then it switches to saying, listen up, children of Levi. Aha, she's so smart, she picked up on that nuance, and there must be a reason for it. So the lesson is that it's never too late to do teshuvah. On's wife taught him this. Yes, Korach, he jumped over, he was in the deep end, and he couldn't save himself even if his life depended on it. But everyone else, it takes it very, very hard to get to a point where there's no turning back. It's very, very hard to get to a point where God completely gives up on a person. In general, 99.9% of the time, we have always another chance. God always gives us another chance. And On was so lucky that his wife brought it to his attention. And that leads me to my second point and lesson over here, is that very often the way God has created the woman's mind, the woman's soul, she has a gift that not only when you speak to someone else, whether you're a man or a woman, when you speak to someone else, that other person is always looking from a different vantage point. They're always able to shed light in a different way. That's obvious. But when a husband speaks to his wife, or when his wife speaks to her husband and sees something and says something, as a husband, we need to consider it greatly. It's not by chance. Now, unless, again, this rule does not apply to all women, right? A wise woman, a faithful woman, a good wife, that's the type of wife that a husband has to be sure to bend his ear over and listen to, because her wisdom is very, very powerful, very potent, very true. She is gifted a sense of revelation, a sixth sense. These are things that we learn specifically from this week's Torah portion from the wife of On who saved On. Now, just before we speak about the next part, very interesting, thing in our Torah is we see no more mention of On. Where did he go? So the Talmud was going on and praising about how his wife saved his life. So where is this guy? On was left anonymous, dormant, almost unmentioned at all in our Torah after this rebellion, because he realized the shame that he caused himself and his family for getting up against the righteous Moses. Again, he survived the rebellion. Out of the whole group, no one else did. And because of that, he was in a state of mourning almost. See, On is from the same vernacular, explains the Ben Ish Chai, as Onen. An Onen is someone that's in the limbo. It's someone that when a family member, a close family member passes away, and it's on your responsibility to bury the individual, you're in Onen, you're in that limbo, and I'll explain in a moment, before the deceased is buried. Because your number one responsibility, your number one goal and objective is to see that with proper respect, your family member is buried. So On, coming from the word Onen, was in this state of limbo. He wasn't executed, yet he got very far, almost too far to turn back, but he turned back. He literally went into a state of mourning for the rest of his life for the mistake he did. Again, not a good thing, because we know that God gives us all chances, and once we take that chance, we make do, we make right what we messed up. God wants us to get up, pick ourselves up, and thrust forward and do good. That's what he wants from us. On didn't do that. So On's wife was great in many ways, saved his life, but On himself didn't heed to all those lessons. The last portion I want to share with us this evening is, and I think a very practical one. It's in one way it's so easy to say, but I think this is one of the hardest things to do. I know my mother has a great group of women who are learning on, I think it's a daily basis, along with a weekly basis class of the laws of Lashon Hara. And Lashon Hara is one of the hardest commandments to keep, especially when you learn about it and you know what is permitted and isn't permitted. Is very, very difficult. On Monday nights, I'm teaching a men's only class about guarding one's eyes, which again is one of the absolute hardest mitzvot, commandments, transgressions for a man to keep. Literally, Lashon Hara and guarding one's eyes are up there, literally at the hardest mitzvot. But I want to say something that's even harder right now. And this takes a very mature person and a very strong-willed person to do the right thing. And that's going to be the lesson of what I'm about to share from the Zera Shimshon. There's a verse that says, I'm going to share it with you now. The verse says, Vayakom Moshe, and Moses gets up, Vayelech el Datan v'Aviram, and he goes to Datan and Aviram. Okay, so he didn't go to Korach because Korach was in the deep end. On is nowhere to be found, right? He gets up and he goes to try to make peace, to make amends with Datan and Aviram, who we know are not the greatest of people. They're the ones who put out who started chaos in Egypt. They're the ones who were always having these snark remarks. They're the ones who told Paro that Moses killed the Egyptian. They're the ones who went out to place manna on Shabbat early morning, and the birds had to come and eat it. They were just constantly undermining Moses from the get-go. Nevertheless, Vayakom Moshe, Moses gets up, and he goes to Datan and Aviram, and Vayelechu acharav kol Ziknei Israel, and the elders of Israel followed him. Okay, interesting. Now, explains the Shimshon, the Gemara in Masechet Sanhedrin, page 110a. The Talmud tells us that from this verse we learn that Moses got up to go make peace, and we have to learn, as great as Moses was, he still didn't hold back from going to make peace, to diffuse a dispute. We cannot allow, explains the Talmud, to let any dispute blow up. We need to do anything we can to stop it. The Talmud on the same page continues to say that anyone who engages in a dispute transgresses a specific transgression of forming a machloket, of forming a dispute that happens to be in this week's Torah portion. Look at this. This is this week's Torah portion, chapter 17, verse 5. Zikaron livnei Yisrael leman asher lo yikrav ish zara asher lo mizera Aharon hu laktir ketor lifnei Hashem. This is the whole story, the final product of Korach and his whole entourage dying. Is a product, is a conclusion. It's a result of any non-descendant of Aaron getting up and trying to do service. Then it says, "V'lo yeh keKorach v'chadato kasher diber Hashem biyad Moshe." And no one, look at here, and so as not to be like Korach and his company, as the Lord spoke regarding him through the hands of Moses. So there's a specific transgression to make a dispute, just like Korach did. Asks Zera Shimshon, I don't see by any other transgression in our Torah that God says, don't do it, just like so-and-so did it, right? The Torah doesn't say, do not commit adultery just as so-and-so did it. Don't commit idolatry just as someone else did. Don't steal the way this person did it. No. The only mitzvah in our entire Torah, says the Zera Shimshon. This is fascinating if you think of it. The only commandment, the only transgression in our entire Torah that says, do not do it just like he did it, is only by the transgression of forming a dispute as not to do it like Korach. And why? Asks the Zera Shimshon. It's a strong answer. Get ready. The Zera Shimshon says, this example of Korach is used because even if a person feels like the other person wronged you, which is most of the time the case, right? We all find a way to justify our own actions. But even if a person really, really, really feels like the other person wronged you, the Zera Shimshon says there's absolutely no room for any discord, no room for dispute. Korach felt slighted by Moses, not given any position at all. His wealth, his strength, his popularity, his wisdom was all wrong. He held that Moses was at fault, that he made a severe, severe mistake. Nevertheless, he was not allowed to start a conflict with anybody, and all the more so a leader of the nation. But to start a conflict, even if you think you're right, explains Zera Shimshon, a person has no right to do it. And we learn it from Korach, who felt entitled, who felt like he was really, really passed over and a mistake was made. All the more so, says the Zera Shimshon, if it's not something so grand and so severe. One misconduct does not condone another, says the Zera Shimshon. Now, he explains, even if you feel offended by another person, we're not allowed to attack. Because, and explains, he gives two reasons why. He says, because that other person you're trying to attack also has a piece of Tselem Elokim. They also have a piece of God in them, a piece of the Shekhinah in that person. By striking back, in essence, you're disrespecting God himself. Another reason why we can't strike back and rebel, because when you take revenge against your fellow who's wronged you, in essence, what you're saying is, I deny what that person has done to me. That person has wronged me. There's a problem with God's calculation of what that person is doing to me. Instead of looking at the person just as a messenger, don't look at the stick that's hitting you, rather look at the hand. The person that insulted you, that stole from you, that wronged you, that damaged you is just a stick, a wand. The hand is God. If a person hurt you, took something from you, said something nasty to you, God wanted you to go through that, to grow from it, who knows, to be punished from it. We don't know these calculations. It gives no right for anybody to say, I'm God's messenger. I'm going around and slapping people and stealing from people and hurting people's feelings. We have no right to do that. But on the receiving end, the Zera Shimshon says, and we've spoken about this before, we have to understand that on the receiving end, if this is what's happening to me, it's because God's will is that this should happen. And therefore, anytime you go back and you take revenge against someone who hurts you, in essence, what you're saying is, God, you made a mistake. I need to right it now. I need to fix this issue. And that was Korach's main issue. Korach couldn't sit back and say, you know what? This must be God's will. If I was not chosen as the Cohen, and I was not chosen as the leader of our family tribe, that's probably the way God wanted it to be. I mean, he saw the Shekhinah. Everyone saw God's presence during the inauguration of the temple. And the continuation of the sacrifices. And nevertheless, he saw the Shekhinah and he was able to dismiss all that and say, Moses, you're wrong. You made a mistake. That is very serious. To the point where the anger that was boiling up in him made him think irrational. And our commentaries amongst them, Zera Shimshon, say that it was Korach's anger, his resentment, that was able to take him from just, an issue with tzitzit and mezuzah, which wasn't a real issue. That was how he formulated it, to an issue with his baby cousin, to an issue with his older cousin, and then to an issue with Moses. And he really went out of whack. He took it out of control. That's what happens with anger, and that's what happens when you mix a little bit of anger with a dispute, a discord comes together, and there's an eruption, and there's a volcano, and that's something very, very severe. Korach failed. Korach was punished to the point where Korach and his entire entourage is still, to this day, they were swallowed up by the ground. Them and their families, they were swallowed up by the ground. Until this day, they are still in the desert where they were at that point. And they're singing, Moshe emet v'torato emet. Moses is the true deliverer, the true messenger, and the Torah, the Torah that he gave us, the Torah that he explained to us, is emet, is the truth. They're singing it as Moshe emet v'torato emet, Moshe emet v'torato emet, and then we go ay 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 ay. Ay, 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 Moshe emet v'torato emet, Moshe emet v'torato emet. Moses is the true prophet, and Moses' Torah is the truth. It's the true will of God. And how lucky are we that we're able to come together on a weekly basis to study the holy words of the Zera Shimshon, to study the true depths of our Torah. This is an opportunity like none other. Very, very few people are able to delve into the Torah through the lenses of the Zera Shimshon. And thank God we have that opportunity. And this opportunity is all of ours. It's because you, amazing people, come every week back to learn some more, that I spend time during the week to prepare it and really, really crystallize it, sharpen it in order to present it in its greatest ways. So may God bless us all to continue revealing the truth in Torah the way Moses intended to pass it on to us, and for us to take that and to pass it on B'ezrat Hashem to our own children. May the merit of the Zera Shimshon be that anyone who needs a shidduch needs to get married, find the right person, get married very, very soon, build a beautiful home. All those who need children, may God bless them with children. Those who need grandchildren or more grandchildren, God should bless them with grandchildren. Those who need parnasah, those who need health, those who need happiness, anything and everything the Zera Shimshon promises. If you learn his Torah, he adopts you as his very own children. So we're coming to the closing of our third year of learning the Zera Shimshon. We are the children of the Zera Shimshon, and we have to remember that we connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu only through learning our Torah. So every opportunity of Torah that we have to learn, we should take it, hasten it, and really, really grow from it. At this point, I would like to allow anyone who would like to unmute themselves, ask a question. We have a couple minutes left. All right. You could unmute yourself with a question.
Such a great parsha.
Yes, great parsha. Okay, Joel Goldman, go for it.
Question: where do they say is the crack in the earth where Korach and everybody is yelling that Moshe Rabbeinu's Torah was Amos?
Okay, so very good. So there is a tradition. If you would find the right place, you would actually hear them singing that song I sang before. Maybe with the ay ay ay, maybe that's a little Hasidish, maybe not. It was before Hasidish.
Yes, good.
But it may be. Who knows? If, after over 3,300 years of singing, I guess you got to change the tune a little. But in all seriousness, we do not know where that crack in the earth is. Again, it would be one of those things that would tamper with our free will. If we would actually hear that or see that, then we'd all only do good all the time. So we don't know where it is. But it's told to us that till today they're still singing. Eileen.
Okay, can you explain a little bit, because I get a little confused on Tehillim, because Korach's sons, I think, must have done Teshuvah where they get honored. They're in Tehillim.
Yes, Korach's children. Yeah, I didn't explain that part. Very good. Korach's children, right before the end, they did Teshuvah and they were not swallowed up by the earth.
Right. So in our Tehillim book, does it say Korach's sons, or does it say? I feel like I see the name.
Lamnatseach livnei Korach mizmor. Praising the children of Korach is the following psalm.
Oh, so they don't mention the names.
No.
They just mention that they are the sons of Korach.
Yes.
Okay, so that's why I couldn't think of their names. All right, well, very nice. So, did they do Teshuvah immediately?
They did it. Well, not immediately. They did it right before the end. Right before it was too late. Right before the earth. It was by that final showdown, by that final confrontation.
Yes.
Before it was too late, they did Teshuvah. So we see that not only On did Teshuvah, but Korach's children did Teshuvah, and they lived happily ever after.
Right. Okay. Thanks. Great parsha.
Yes.
Hi, I have a question. Two things. Okay, so one thing is that it's funny how On's wife and Korach's wife had something to do with like head coverings or uncovering the head, where On's wife did it for the positive and Korach's wife did it for the negative.
Yes, nice. Very good.
And then a question is, why do we have like Korach as a parsha? Like, yes, obviously his story and his actions were like, very worthy of us hearing, just like all the rest of the Torah, but like why him in particular? Merit? Yeah, why does he have a merit to like be
why does he have a merit to have his name as a parsha? Okay, it's a good question. I don't have an answer offhand. I have to look it up. It's a very good question. Every time that a name of a parsha is named after a person, there's a specific reason. I mean, we can ask the same thing. Well, Pinchas, we know why, but Balak, King Balak, he was an evil king. Why was he given a Torah portion name?
I got it.
What else do we have? Chayesara. We have a good amount of them. The question is what did Korach? I mean, I could think of a couple answers. It could be that the message is so powerful. It could be that he started off good, right? He was righteous to start off, and even the greatest and the most righteous can fall and can make a mistake. But I'm sure there's other answers as well. I'll try to find them, Blineder, and text your mom. Okay, any other questions?
Thinking.
Where's Isaac Capuano? You don't have a question, Isaac?
My brains are squeaky clean today.
Okay.
Thank you. It was a magnificent lesson.
Thank you. Okay, Yasmin.
Hi, good evening, everybody. So this is more like, remember last week somebody asked about the challah and the meraglim? It was Mrs. Friedman. We share a last name, but mine has two E's. So I actually asked my father-in-law on Shabbos. I went to him, and so I'm gonna give it's his credit, Rabbi Shmuel Friedman from Lakewood. So he said that after the Cheder Meraglim, with the spies, Bnei Israel were still so wanting to go to Israel. Like, it wasn't like, okay, we're gonna be stuck here, forget this. They were still crying. They were screaming and crying and telling Hashem, we want to go to Israel. We want to be there so badly. that Hashem actually gave them one of the first mitzvahs to do in Israel, which is to separate the challah, Parashat challah. So because of that, Hashem gave them something to do because they wanted to go to Israel so badly. That's what my father-in-law said.
Beautiful. It's beautiful.
I like it.
Thank you.
I like it. We need all the help we can get and to keep us inspired.
Beautiful.
Nice. Mom, you had a question?
Yes, I have a comment. I thought it was so wonderful that you tied in the laws of Shmirat HaLashon and the avoda, the work that we have to do to keep that, and Emunah. And that's something that is so powerful. It's something that has come up in our classes and in our learnings. And I always tell the women that once we have a very solid Emunah, then we find ourselves not needing to speak Lashon Hara. Because if we believe that Hashem is running the entire world and everything that he does is for the best of each and every one of us, because there is such a tremendous hashgacha pratit for each person, then I would not be the kind of person, then if I have that in mind, that I'm not going to say something like, how come she got that? Or how come he got that? Or why did he deserve that? Or why is he working there? Or why did he have that girl to marry? Or because they would be irrelevant. Because once you have the emunah, you're not looking at what other people have. Because you know with total certainty that everything that you have and everything that you're going through is exactly tailor-made for each and every one of us. And with the emunah, then we could not make the mistakes that we've seen. Not Miriam with her starting with Lashon Hara on her brother, not Aaron with listening, not the spies with speaking so harshly about the land. And that teaches us that we have to be careful how we speak about anything and everything. And then now with Korach. So all of these lessons put together this incredible infusion in us to have emunah, and then we can do our avodah.
Perfect. Amazing.
Thank you for putting it all together. So nice.
Thank you everyone for coming. It was great. Next week, we're going to go back to Wednesday night. Zera Shimshon. Monday night, we're doing a men's only class again. It's going to be something regular, half an hour Monday night. And please God, we'll pump out some more stuff while we're away.
Right. Have a safe trip.
Thank you, Rava. Have a safe trip. Thank you so much.
Let's go
Thank you.
for a minute.
Minutes. You
Let's
can
go